I'm Marianne Williamson, and when I was growing up, America had a vibrant middle class. The average American worker had decent benefits, could afford a home, could afford a car, could afford a yearly vacation, could afford for one member of the couple to stay home if they wished, and could afford to send their kids to college. But over the last 50 years, there's been a massive transfer of wealth to the tune of $50 trillion from the bottom 90% of Americans to the top 1%, decimating America's middle class. We all owe President Biden a debt of gratitude for defeating President Trump in 2020. But with the things that they're going to be throwing at us in 2024, we need to submit to the American people an agenda of fundamental economic reform, universal health care, tuition-free colleges at state colleges and universities, higher education including tech schools, paternity and maternity leave, free child care, and a guaranteed living wage. These are things that are considered moderate positions in every other advanced democracy. But in the United States, people have been trained to expect too little. The American people have been played.
Now, that was 2024 Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson officially announcing her challenge to President Joe Biden. And she is here with us to discuss. Welcome, Marianne.
Oh, thank you. Nice to see you, Robbie.
So nice to have you with us. Let's get started. Why did you decide, you acknowledge in that video that you're grateful to President Biden for defeating former President Trump. What made you decide to run against him in this coming election cycle?
President Biden apparently plans to tell the American people that the economy is doing well. And it's doing well for 20% of Americans. But that 20% who live on this enchanted economic island are surrounded by a vast sea of economic despair. And the proposals of the president help people survive that unjust system. We need to fundamentally alter it. We need genuine economic reform in this country. And that's not coming from the Biden administration. And it's the incremental changes, the slower changes, and we need to make a real economic U-turn in this country.
It's so great to have you with us. I'm so glad that you announced. I think that your message and the spirituality that you bring to this platform and this race is incredibly important. I guess my first question would be, how is this different than let's say, Bernie Sanders platform? Where do you see yourself distinguishing from, his run back, 2016, 2020?
In terms of the economics of my platform, I think they're very much aligned with Bernie Sanders and millions of other people in this country who recognize that the economic system in this country is unfair. Over the last 48 years, we've had a $50 trillion transfer of wealth, as that video referred to, from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. We've had a diminishment of public spending, a diminishment of resources given to the commons and the general good in this country, so that a very few Americans could always have an easier time getting richer. It's simply wrong. It's unsustainable. And it's also undemocratic. The late Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis said, you can have large amounts of money concentrated in the hands of a few, or you can have democracy. You cannot have both. We have created a system of economic royalism, as Franklin Roosevelt described it. So in terms of the economic perspective, I'm very similar to Bernie Sanders. I also think that I bring, just as he brings things that I don't, I think I bring things that he doesn't. Concentration on children, for instance. And also, as you were saying, Batya, there is a more whole person, even spiritual perspective that's behind all this for me that some people, I believe, relate to.
Well, you said recently about the DNC in an ABC News interview this week, quote, the DNC should not be rigging the system. They don't even pretend anymore. ABC News' Jonathan asked, so that's what's going on? They're rigging the system for Biden. And you responded, they even admit it. So can you speak more about how, the elite interests in the Democratic Party have rigged the entire game already for Biden and did so in the past, maybe for Hillary Clinton as well?
Well, look, this isn't 100 years ago. A bunch of men sit around a table smoking cigars, deciding who the nominee should be. this is the problem when political parties have this power, and this is what our founders warned us about. Parties that have more concern, factions that have concern with their party than with their country. The Democratic voters should decide who the Democratic nominee should be. That's really the moral basis of democracy, that there's a kind of group conscience, that if enough people weigh in, somehow truth rises to the top. More often than not, it does. And that was exactly how the founders saw it. So for something as important as who the Democrats nominate in 2024, this should not be decided by a small group of people. This should be decided by Democratic voters who should have as wide an array of options before them as possible.
I love this idea of the wisdom of the body politic rising up and bringing truth. And it sort of brings me to my next question, which is, in many ways, former President Trump really represented a kind of return of the repressed, right? Like this rising up of working class rage at this elitist machine that had silenced them for so long. That's how I see it. And I'm wondering, many working class Americans saw in Trump a real tribune, a finger in the eye of that 20% that hates them so much, as you point out. Is there anything you think it's important to learn from President Trump on that front in terms of representing those people?
It's very important that we recognize the truth of what you just said. In 2016, both Trump and Bernie Sanders said to the American people, I see you, I understand your rage, and your rage is legitimate. And the very fact that Bernie Sanders had such a difficult time, I believe if the DNC had kept their fingers off the scale, either Bernie or Hillary would have won the primary, but I believe Trump would not have been president. The difference between Bernie and Trump is that Bernie meant it. Bernie said, I see your rage, and I'm going to address the conditions that cause it. Trump is master of the art of the deal. He wrote the book. He has this very, as certain kinds of personalities have. He knows what people want to hear. The difference is he didn't mean it. He did not. He knew that people were angry. Jerry Kushner said in an interesting interview that he had said to his father, there are a lot of father-in-law. There are a lot of angry people out there, and we could harness all that and make you president. That's all Trump was doing. He knew that there was a political possibility there for him, a potential there for him. He has contempt for the very people he was speaking to. He's made that clear. They could never get into Mar-a-Lago. But what he said in terms of I understand and validate your rage, as did Bernie Sanders, was not only true in 2016, it's true today. And if we nominate a presidential candidate who's saying everything's good, we're going to make the same mistake we made in 2016 when Hillary said, let's just continue the success of Barack Obama. And millions of people said, what success? I'm drowning here. And that's exactly what they will say in 2024 unless we offer them a genuine alternative.
Marianne, I've noticed that you are willing to have conversations with a variety of people to appear on different media environments. We are appreciative that you come on our show, which is kind of independent or has ideological views on all sorts of sides. So you actually, you interact with conservative media or alternative and contrarian media a lot. Do you think they actually take you more seriously, or they're more willing to think outside the box of just like, well, no, we have to get on board with President Biden's agenda?
Well, I mean, if they're right-wing media, obviously they're not thinking we have to get on board with Biden. I do think there's an openness, but let's not kid ourselves. I think that tune would change if I was actually the nominee. So, yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I want to know what are you planning to do differently this time than in 2020? What is it, or are you going to run the same exact kind of campaign? What are you looking towards?
Well, certainly in terms of the things I talk about, they're very much the same because the conditions I was speaking to are, if anything, in many ways even worse now. That's not specifically due to this administration. That's just the way the system operates, perpetuating this injustice that plagues our society. Also, we found, unfortunately, that defeating Trump in 2020 did not get rid of the hatred and division. If anything, it was more like a cancer that had already metastasized. So I'm certainly speaking to some deeper levels of internal plaguing and woundedness in the fabric of American society than I was even speaking to then, because we associated it with one person rather than the large-scale societal problem that it is. Hopefully, I will also be able to run a campaign this time, that is more able to take on the job, the task at hand. Listen, you run for, it's like they talk about your first marriage. It's your first presidential campaign. You learn a lot, and you're ready the second time to do it much better.
Marianne, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always wonderful to be here.
We'll have more Rising right after this.